when my mother-in-law, Barbara, showed up at our door, 3 designer suitcases in tow and tears glistening in her eyes. Every instinct in me screamed that something was off. But Mike, my husband, was already ushering her inside, his voice gentle, his concern obvious. I hesitated, watching the performance she'd clearly perfected over years and across multiple states. "The condo association is forcing everyone out," she sobbed, dabbing her eyes with the corner of her silk scarf. "Something about structural issues. I have nowhere else to go. I'm a real estate attorney. But oh, I just don't know what to do." Red flags should have been waving, but Mike, ever the devoted son, didn't ask the questions I wanted him to. Why hadn't she mentioned this emergency during Sunday dinner last week? Why did her evacuation involve carefully packed Louis Vuitton luggage? "It's just for a few weeks," Mike assured me as I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, heart sinking, "until Mom finds a new place." Those weeks stretched into months. Barbara settled into our guest suite like a queen claiming a new kingdom. She moved furniture, criticized my cooking, and somehow made Mike feel guilty for not offering her more support during her crisis. Then the improvements began. "This kitchen is absolutely outdated," she declared one morning, arms crossed, eyes scanning the counters. "I've called a contractor to get us an estimate on renovations." "Us?" I asked, incredulous. "Barbara, this isn't your house." She smiled, that patronizing, honey-dripping smile I would come to hate. "Well, dear, since I'm living here and contributing to the household." Contributing? The only thing she contributed was stress, tension, and a non-stop stream of criticism. But behind my back, Barbara had been busy. She bought new curtains, replaced perfectly fine appliances with high-end models, and even hired landscapers to redo the garden, all without so much as consulting us. "Mom's just trying to help," Mike would say, voice tight with loyalty. "She feels bad about staying here." Then came the lawsuit. Papers were served at my office, a devastating, almost surreal moment. Barbara had escalated her ultimate power play. She was suing us for $500,000. She claimed she had invested significantly in the property and deserved an ownership stake because of her improvements and established residence. The attorney representing her, Jeremy Collins, notorious for helping relatives claim partial ownership of family homes. Mike was stunned. "Mom, how could you?" he whispered. "Darling," she purred, voice saccharine, "I'm just protecting my interests. After all, I've put money into this house. It's only fair I get something back." That was it. I decided to dig. As a real estate attorney, I had resources, and Barbara had made a fatal mistake taking on someone with my connections. 3 days of calls, research, and sleepless nights revealed a truth that left me shaking. Barbara Harrison wasn't just an opportunistic mother-in-law. She was a professional scam artist, and her pattern was methodical and practiced. She had done this before. It documented cases across multiple states. The Johnsons in Florida, the Clarks in Georgia, the Paddles in Texas, all families who had taken her in out of kindness, only to find themselves facing lawsuits claiming she had a stake in their homes. The method was always the same. Find a family with a nice property, manufacture a crisis demanding temporary housing, move in, make unauthorized improvements, then sue for partial ownership or a payout. Every step calculated, every detail intentional. "Mike," I said, spreading evidence across the dining table, "she's a professional con artist. She targets families for property scams." I laid out the documents. Settlements totaling over $800,000 from previous victims. Photos of Barbara smiling with families she'd scammed. Bank transfers showing where the money had gone. Court records exposing her manipulations. This wasn't a desperate mother in need. This was a deliberate, calculated criminal operation. Even the condo crisis was fabricated. Barbara had planned this entire move, even hiring Jeremy Collins before stepping foot in our home. "And there's more," I said, pulling out bank statements. "The money she spent on our kitchen renovations, the new curtains, the landscaping, it all came from her previous victims. She was funding her next scam with the last family's money." Mike sat frozen, staring at the evidence, photos, court records, and transfers, finally seeing the truth about his mother. "Why?" he whispered, voice breaking. She has money. She doesn't need to do this. It's not about money, I said firmly. It's about power and control. Every family she scams feeds her ego, her sense of superiority. And yes, her bank account. Then, as if on cue, Barbara walked in, all poise and litigation-ready charm. I hope you're discussing a reasonable settlement, she said, voice practiced, eyes scanning the table. She stopped mid-step, seeing the evidence spread out like a battlefield. Hello, Barbara, I said, smiling, my tone deceptively calm. Or should I call you Barbara Watson, or Barbara Green? You use both names in Florida, right? Let's talk about the Johnsons and the settlement you squeezed out of them. For the first time, I saw real fear crack her sophisticated facade. Those are private legal matters, she began, her voice wavering, private legal matters showing a clear pattern of fraud. I interrupted. Would you like to explain to Mike how you ran the same scam on 8 other families? How you planned the lawsuits before you even move in? Barbara turned to Mike, slipping into her familiar victim act. Surely you don't believe these ridiculous accusations. I'm your mother. Mike held up a photo, taken just last year, Barbara, with the Paddles in Texas, their son the same age as our own. His hands shook. You did the same thing to them, didn't you? Moved in, caused chaos, sued them for half their house. That was different. Barbara stammered, her confidence cracking. Different how? I asked, voice calm but cutting. Different. Because they settled for $150,000 to make me go away, she admitted, almost under her breath. Different because I use that money for my next venture. And different, I said, voice low, because this time you targeted your own son. The next 48 hours were a lesson in watching a skilled con artist unravel. Barbara cycled through every trick in her book, tears, sobbing, emotional manipulation, shifting blame, trying to charm, threaten, and guilt-trip us simultaneously. First came the tears. How could you do this to me? She wailed to Mike, voice cracking with fake despair, wrapping him in the same web she had used on countless other families. First came the tears. How could you do this to me? She sobbed. To Mike, investigating your own mother. I raised you better than this. When that didn't work, she switched to threats. If you pursue this, I'll have to tell the court about your drinking problem. She hissed at me. What drinking problem? I asked innocently, recording her threat on my phone. The one I'll testify about? She smiled coldly. Who do you think they'll believe? A concerned mother or a hostile editor-in-law? But Barbara had made a critical error. Her previous victims were more than happy to talk once I found them. She did the exact same thing to us. Sarah Johnson told me over Zoom, her face tight with remembered pain. Moved in after claiming her apartment had black mold, started renovating with its permission, then sued us for $200,000, claiming she'd invested in our property. The Paddle story was nearly identical. She targeted us through our son's wedding. Mr. Peddle explained, said she needed a place to stay during the ceremony preparations. 6 months later, we were in court. I compiled their testimonies along with the court records. Barbara's pattern was crystal clear. Month 1, move in using a manufactured crisis. Months 2 to 3, make unauthorized improvements. Month 4, start documenting her contributions to the household. Month 5, hire a lawyer and prepare the suit. Month 6, sue for partial ownership or a large settlement. She's got it down to a science. Agent Torres from the FBI's Real Estate Fraud Division told us she even uses the SAMA contractor in each city, a guy named Pete who inflates the value of hair improvements for the lawsuit. Mike was struggling to reconcile the mother heck knew with the calculating fraudster in our evidence file, but she was always so generous, he said, always helping people. That's part of her cover, I explained gently. She builds a reputation for generosity so no one suspects her real motives. Those designer gifts she gives pay for with money stolen from other families. Barbara's lawyer, Jeremy Collins, showed up our door with a generous offer to settle. I invited him into my home office and laid out our counter-evidence. Your client has a documented history of real estate fraud, I said pleasantly. Would you like to see the pattern or should I present it directly to the State Bar Association? Colin's face went pale as he reviewed the files. Mrs. Harrison never mentioned. Of course not. Just like she never mentioned the 3 pending incesties in other states or the fact that her contractor Pete is already cooperating with the FBI. The lawyer left quickly, his settlement offer untouched. Barbara's next move was pure desperation. She called a family meeting, inviting Mike's siblings and their spouses. Your brother and his wife are trying to destroy me, she announced dramatically. After everything I've done for this family. But I was ready. I connected my laptop to the TV and started playing videos from her previous victims. Mom, Mike's sister Janet whispered, is that the same speech you gave the Clarks before you sued them? The recordings were damning. Barbara using identical lines, identical tears, identical claims of prosecution, just with different families. You've been running the scam for years, Mike realized. Even when Dad was alive. Your father never understood but since, Barbara snapped, dropping her victim act. Someone had to provide the festal we deserved. That's when her phone buzzed. She checked it and for the first time, real fear crossed her face. Problems? I asked innocently. Oh, that's probably about your contractor, Pete. He's been very cooperative with the Fizzens. They found those falsified renovation receipts. Barbara stood up, grabbing her designer purse. This is ridiculous. I don't have to stay here and be accused. Actually, you do. Ismold, the FBI has some questions about wire fraud across state lines. And those agents by our front door, they have a warrant. Sure enough, 2 FBI agents were waiting in our driveway. Barbara's sophisticated facade cracked completely. Mike, she screeched. Are you going to let them arrest your mother? But Mike just shook his head, looking at the evidence of her multiple frauds. No, Mom, I'm going to let them arrest a con artist who happens to be my mother. As the agents led her away, Barbara turned to make one final threat. You'll regret this. I have friends in high places, like Jeremy Collins. I called after her. He's already withdrawn from your case. Apparently, he doesn't want to risk his law license. Defending documented fraud, inside, Mike's siblings sat in stunned silence, processing the truth about their mother. The Christmas gifts, Janet said suddenly, those expensive presents she always gave. She bought them with money stolen from other families. Everything about her was a performance. I confirmed. The generous mother, faithful house guests, the victim of circumstance, all characters she played to set up her scams. Mike picked up one of the case files. 8 families, has 8 quietly. 8 homes she invaded. 8 lawsuits. How did we never know? Because she's good at what she does, I explained. She picks her targets carefully, builds trust, then strikes when they're emotionally invested. Like moving in right after my wedding, Janet realized, or during the Paddle's wedding preparations. She waits for emotional moments when families are most vulnerable. The evidence of Barbara's calculating nature was there in every document. She hadn't just scanned these families, she'd studied them, learned their weaknesses, and struck when they were least likely to question her motives. As we watched the FBI car drive away with Barbara in the back seat, Mike squeezed my hand. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing through her when I couldn't. But our ordeal wasn't over because Barbara had one last card to play and she was about to prove that a cornered con artist is the most dangerous kind. Barbara's final play came from her jail cell and it was as ruthless as it was desperate. She called every family member, every friend, every business contact in her extensive network, spinning a tale of elder abyss and family betrayal. My own son let them arrest me, she sobbed to anyone who would listen, all because I wanted to help improve their home. That wife office turned him against me. Then came the social media campaign. Somehow she managed to get her story picked up by a Facebook group dedicated to mothers wronged by daughters-in-law. Within days, our phones were flooded with HMSs from strangers defending a woman they'd never met. You're going to regret crossing me, she wrote in a letter from jail. I've got nothing left to lose now. She was right about that last part. The FBI investigation had uncovered the full scope of her scams. Total fraudulent settlements, 1.2 million families. Victimized 12. not just 8, as we initially thought. Property has targeted 15 states involved, 5 active investigations. 4. Your mother-in-law wasn't just running a scam. Agent Torres explained during our follow-up meeting she was operating a sophisticated real estate fraud enterprise. Those improvements she made to each house, all done with unlicensed contractors who kicked back part of the payment to her. Even her designer wardrobe was part of scheme. She used the stolen money to maintain an image of wealth that made her stories more believable. Who would suspect a woman in Chanel of running a con? The preliminary hearing was a study in Barbara's manipulation tactics. She appeared in court wearing a conservative dress that made her look older and more vulnerable. All traces of her usual allure more carefully erased. I just wanted to be close to my son, she told the judge, her voice trembling. Is it wrong for a mother to help her children? But this time her performance fell flat. The prosecution had videos of her bragging to her contractor about how easy it was to scam stupid families what was their relatives. They had bank records showing how she'd moved money between accounts to hide her settlements. Most damning of all, they had her own detailed notes about selecting and targeting victims. Look at this entry, the prosecutor said, highlighting a passage from her notebook. Quote, families going through weddings or babies are easiest to manipulate. Their emotional state makes them less likely to question financial decisions. This wasn't maternal love, Your Honor. This was calculated predation. The judge wasn't impressed by Barbara's tears. Mrs. Harrison, you didn't just steal the money. You stole people's trust in their own families. You turned moments of celebration into opportunities for fraud. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. As they led her away, Barbara made one final attempt to reach Mike. I'm still your mother. You can't let them do this. But Mike stood firm. No, Mom. My mother would have loved me enough not to try to destroy my marriage and steal my home. The aftermath. Brock unexpected healing. Barbara's previous victims formed a support group, helping each other process the unique trauma of being scammed by someone they had trusted as family. The money wasn't the worst part. Sarah Johnson shared during a group meeting. It was realizing that every moment of kindness, every seemingly generous gesture was just part of her con. Mike's siblings had their own revelations. Janet discovered Barbara had been setting up a similar scam targeting her new house. She was just waiting for the right crisis to exploit. Janet realized looking at her mother's notes. The FBI seized Barbara's assets, including her designer wardrobe and multiple bank accounts. The funds were used to make partial restitution to her victims, though the emotional damage could be repaid. 1 year later, we held a family dinner, the first one without Barbara's manipulative presence. As we sat around the table she had unsettled to claim as her territory, Mick raised his glass to truth, he said simply, and to real family, the kind that loves without schemes. Barbara still writes sometimes, always with a new angle, a new manipulation to try. Her latest letter claimed she's found God in prison and wants to make amends. The check she included for partial repayment bounced, of course, but her power over us is gone. Her designer clothes have been auctioned. Her contractor Pete took a plea deal to testify against her, and her network of fenimellers has crumbled under FIBA scrutiny. Sometimes I look at the improvements she made to our house, the fancy appliances, the custom curtains, and consider replacing them, but Mike suggested we keep them. They're not trophies of her scheme anymore. He said they're reminders that we survived her con game and came out stronger. Barbara will be eligible for parole in 6 years. Sometimes I wonder if she spends her days in prison planning her next scam or if she ever truly regrets targeting her own son. But then I look at our home, truly our home now, free from her shims, and I realize it doesn't matter. She taught us the hard way that real family isn't about property or possessions. It's about protecting each other from predators, even when those separators share our